Hi, English 12, it's Mrs. Sopiarz-Rianda, and this is the big week. We have been prepping for this week all Unit 6 so far. So for the past 3 weeks, we have been getting everything ready. We've been doing our research, we've been note-taking, we have been working on our evidence and drawing conclusions, and then we also created the first draft of our Works Cited page last week. This week, we are going to start and complete our first draft of your research paper. So you can see right here that session 4 is due March 2nd before midnight. March 1st before midnight. And like I said, that research paper is what you will be really working on in this session. So here is our session plan. And so in addition to writing that research paper, we're also going to be asking family and friends to provide their insight for your paper as evidence as well. So it's going to be a busy week, but at the end of the week, you'll have that first draft. And remember, that first draft is really the hardest part of the entire writing process. That's where you're going to be doing the bulk of your work. But don't worry, I have a step-by-step step-by-step process to help you with that. So don't worry. So here's the list of assignments this week, as well as that suggested schedule for the week. So if you need some help with your time management, please use that. And here are the guiding questions for our session this week. So the very first thing you're going to do this week is create your own research survey question. So at this point, you have a really in-depth understanding of your subject's life and times. Now it's time to take it a little bit deeper and to conduct some qualitative research about your person's life and how he has impacted or she has impacted the world today. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating exactly what I created in Unit 5 using Google Forms. You're going to create a survey. So be sure to watch this video. It walks you through how to create a survey and form where you will receive all your responses. So you're going to create 3 research questions, survey questions about your subject and how he or she's impacted the world. So these questions should be short answer and ask about the person's life specifically or how the topic or the area they researched impact their world. So here are some examples of some 3 good survey questions. If you have Jackie Robinson, by the way, please don't use these questions, okay? There's only one person that does, so you know who you are. So distribute that survey to as many friends and family as you can. Remember, 50 was the magic number, but it might be a little bit less if it's just one person making that distribution, right? So you can do it on Twitter, on Facebook, email, text, however you want to do it, just like we did in Unit 5. The information that you gather on this survey will be a really important part of your final research paper because that's the evidence you're going to be using, part of the evidence you're going to be using for your research paper. So again, here is that link and the video to help you create that Google survey and form. And once you've created that survey, share it with your classmates here, and then be sure to take at least 2 student surveys to gather information on their topic. If not more. Be helpful. So with that, it's time to begin begin writing your research paper. And this research paper will accomplish a lot of different things. It'll provide you an overview of a small portion of a person's life. This research paper is not simply a biography from birth to death. You need to focus on one topic within your person's life or time period of their life. So this could be 1 year, it could be 5 years. It is a focus. It is a focus of time, okay? Make an argument of why your person is influential in today's world. This is the question you should be asking and arguing in your research paper. and then provide evidence from this survey and your research on how your person changed our world today. Okay, so be sure to review all of these qualifications for your research paper and look over this rubric. You will be grading yourself next week. I will ask you, once you have your final paper before you submit it, that you will, using this rubric, you will grade yourself. Okay, so be sure to check it now, and you will be checking it again. One thing that I really did want to have you focus on in your paper is that it does include parenthetical citations and a works cited page. You created that works cited page last week, but you also need to cite your sources in your actual writing, and we'll go over that a little bit more next week. You also need to have at least 5 sources, which include at least 2 primary sources in your research. Okay, so I really just wanted to highlight those 2 aspects of this paper. Make sure you read everything, but I really wanted to focus on those 2 pieces. Okay, so now that you understand the qualifications of the paper, it's time to start looking at some example research papers. So read the papers here, and as you read, jot down some ideas of what makes a good research paper. Now, these papers are not perfect. They are models, they are student examples, but they really help you provide and start thinking about what works and what doesn't work for a paper, for this paper. So click Next. And here, post in the discussion board after you have read a few papers, what makes a good research paper, and then of the examples shared on the last page, which organizational pattern or style best fits your paper that we're writing, and what are some elements of the example papers that you'd like to imitate in your writing, and then respond to at least 2 other students. Okay? Finally, it's time to start writing your paper. And the very first step should be to write a good introduction to your paper. Any good introduction should accomplish these 3 things: provide an overview of the topic, introduce the reader to the main argument of the paper, and interest the reader in the topic and invite them to read further. So here are some strategies to review and incorporate into your introduction. And also here are some missteps, some pitfalls that you should avoid in writing your paper and avoid in writing your introduction. Okay? Once you have that situated, it's finally time to start actually writing your first draft. Here on the left is an outline for your research paper. You don't have to follow it, but I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do. The biggest issue with most papers is organization. And if you use an outline to guide your writing of your first draft, then that issue is eliminated, okay? Then it's other things that we can focus on, like evidence and, how to properly cite things and maybe your argument. But this is a step-by-step process in guiding you in your organization. I highly, highly recommend that you use it, okay? And once you use this outline, submit your first draft on the next page, okay? Now, when you submit your first draft, I will provide the majority of my feedback on your first draft. That was my phone. For your final draft, I'll provide you a rubric in turnitin.com, the one that we saw earlier in this session. For your rough draft, I will provide detailed feedback in Schoology. You need to use it. Use that along with the work we're going to be doing next week to revise your paper before you turn it into turnitin.com in session 5. Okay? If you submit your rough draft at the same time or after you submit your final draft, and as a result do not receive my feedback on your first draft, you'll only receive up to 50% credit for this rough draft. Okay, so what I really want to emphasize here is submit your rough draft, get my feedback, revise using my feedback, and then submit your final draft. Okay? Many times in the past I've gotten rough drafts that are just kind of an afterthought, and they're so important in the writing process that I really want to make sure you submit your first draft. Okay? If you have any questions this week about anything, please let me know. I'm happy to help. Thanks.